For most of human history, distance ruled everything. It determined where people lived, where they traded, who they met, what they knew. A journey of 100 miles could consume days. A journey across an ocean could consume months. Entire civilizations developed in relative isolation because the world was simply too large to cross quickly. Mountains separated kingdoms. Oceans separated continents. Deserts separated cultures. Distance was one of humanity's oldest enemies. And for thousands of years, it seemed unbeatable. Yet humans possessed something powerful: imagination. Long before the airplane existed, people dreamed of flight. They watched birds soar effortlessly through the sky. They observed hawks circling high above valleys. They saw eagles riding invisible currents of air. Again and again, humanity asked the same question: if birds can fly, why can't we? The desire was ancient, perhaps as ancient as civilization itself. Legends emerged in every culture. Stories of humans rising into the heavens. Stories of magical wings. Stories of gods descending from the sky. Flight occupied a special place in the human imagination. It represented freedom, power, possibility, escape from earthly limitations. But dreams are easier than engineering. Nature had solved the problem of flight. Through millions of years of evolution, humanity had to solve it from scratch. For centuries, attempts failed. Inventors attached wings to their arms. They leaped from towers. They built strange machines. Most achieved little beyond injury. The sky remained out of reach, yet each failure revealed something important. Flying was not simply a matter of flapping wings. The challenge was more complex, more demanding, more scientific. Understanding would come slowly, one discovery at a time. As knowledge expanded, so did ambition. The scientific revolution transformed humanity's understanding of the natural world. Mathematics explained motion. Physics explained forces. Engineers began approaching flight differently. Not as magic, not as fantasy, but as a problem to be solved. Air itself became an object of study. How did it move? How did it create lift? How did birds remain aloft? Questions once confined to dreamers now attracted scientists. Answers gradually emerged. Meanwhile, another revolution was unfolding: the Industrial Revolution. Steam engines transformed transportation. Railroads crossed continents. Factories reshaped economies. Technology accelerated at an unprecedented pace. Humanity became increasingly confident. Machines were solving problems once thought impossible. If steam could conquer land, perhaps engineering could conquer the sky. The 19th century became an age of experimentation. Inventors throughout Europe and America pursued flight. Some focused on balloons. Others focused on gliders. Each approach revealed valuable lessons. Balloons demonstrated that humans could leave the ground, but they drifted wherever the wind carried them. Control remained elusive. Gliders offered another possibility. Pilots could shape movement, guide direction, interact with the air, but sustained powered flight remained beyond reach. The challenge involved several problems at once: lift, control, propulsion. Every element had to work together. Solving one was not enough. The entire system had to succeed simultaneously. Few people appreciated how difficult that would be. The world stood on the edge of a breakthrough. Yet most people did not realize it. At the end of the 19th century, railroads dominated transportation. Steamships connected continents. Horses remained common. The idea of flying machines seemed distant. Interesting, perhaps. Important, perhaps. But not revolutionary. Very few imagined that flight would eventually transform civilization itself. Among those pursuing the challenge were two brothers from Ohio, Wilbur Wright, Orville Wright. Neither possessed advanced university degrees. Neither led a famous laboratory. They operated a bicycle business, yet bicycles taught valuable lessons: balance, control, mechanical precision. The brothers approached flight methodically, patiently, scientifically. They studied previous experiments, analyzed failures, built models, conducted tests. Rather than relying upon speculation, they gathered data. Again and again, the work was tedious, careful, uncelebrated, but it produced results. The Wright brothers became convinced that control represented the key challenge. An airplane must not merely fly, it must be steerable, stable, manageable. The sky demanded precision. Gradually, their designs improved. Gliders became more capable. Understanding deepened. Confidence grew. Then came the final step: power. A flying machine required an engine light enough to fly and powerful enough to sustain flight. Such engines barely existed. The brothers adapted, innovated, improvised, and eventually built what they needed. Everything was coming together: years of effort, years of failure, years of experimentation, all leading toward a cold December morning. December 17, 1903. Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Wind swept across the dunes. A fragile machine rested on the ground. Wood, fabric, wire. An invention that looked modest, almost fragile, certainly not world-changing. Yet appearances can be deceptive. Orville Wright climbed aboard. The engine started. The machine moved forward. Then something extraordinary happened. It left the ground. For 12 seconds, powered, controlled flight became reality. The distance traveled was short. The flight was brief. But history had changed. Humanity had crossed an invisible boundary. For the first time, a powered aircraft carried a pilot through the air under control. The age of flight had begun. Few newspapers noticed. Few governments reacted. Few citizens understood what had happened. The event seemed small. A machine had flown for seconds. Hardly headline material in an age of railroads and industrial expansion. Yet the significance was immense. The Wright brothers had not simply built a machine. They had opened a door leading toward a future nobody could fully imagine. A future of global travel, global commerce, global conflict, global connection. The airplane would eventually shrink oceans, compress continents, transform economies, reshape warfare, redefine distance itself. But all of that remained ahead. For now, humanity had taken its first controlled steps into the sky. The world was still vast, still slow, still separated by enormous distances. Yet something fundamental had changed. For the first time in history, humanity possessed wings. When the Wright brothers achieved powered flight in 1903, the world did not immediately change. No crowds filled the streets. No governments rushed to invest. No airlines appeared overnight. The airplane existed, but its future remained uncertain. Many inventions achieve a breakthrough. and then disappear. The question was simple. Would the airplane become useful, or would it remain a fascinating curiosity? The answer would emerge slowly. One flight at a time, one experiment at a time, one risk at a time. In the years following Kitty Hawk, aviation remained fragile. Aircraft were delicate machines, constructed from wood, fabric, wire, and determination. Pilots flew exposed to the elements. No pressurized cabins, no sophisticated instruments, no guarantees. Every flight carried uncertainty. Every takeoff represented a test. Yet uncertainty attracted a certain kind of person. The pioneer, the risk-taker, the individual willing to go where others would not. Aviation became a magnet for such people. Across Europe and America, inventors and pilots pursued the sky. Some sought fame, others sought knowledge, many sought both. Each flight expanded humanity's understanding of what was possible. Aircraft improved rapidly. Engines became more reliable. Structures became stronger. Control systems became more refined. What seemed impossible one year often became routine the next. Progress accelerated. Crowds began paying attention. Newspapers reported aviation feats. Public demonstrations attracted spectators. People gathered in fields to watch airplanes climb into the air. For many observers, the sight seemed almost magical. Human beings had always lived beneath the sky. Now they were entering it. The airplane became a symbol of modernity, a symbol of progress, a symbol of a future arriving faster than expected. Soon, pilots began competing against one another. Who could fly farther? Who could fly higher? Who could stay airborne longer? Records became powerful motivators. Each achievement inspired another. Aviation entered an era of relentless experimentation. Distance records fell, altitude records fell, endurance records fell. The limits kept moving, and with every record, public confidence grew. Investors noticed. Governments noticed. Industries noticed. The airplane was beginning to prove itself. One of the most important developments involved reliability. Early flights were unpredictable. Mechanical failures were common. Accidents occurred frequently. Many observers doubted whether airplanes could ever become practical transportation. To change minds, aviation needed consistency. Aircraft had to work repeatedly, not occasionally, not experimentally, reliably. Engineers focused intensely on this challenge. Every improvement mattered. Better engines, better propellers, better materials, better aerodynamics. Collectively, these advances transformed aviation from an experiment into an industry. The sky became increasingly busy. Air shows emerged around the world. Pilots performed daring maneuvers, loops, dives, turns. Crowds watched in amazement. The airplane became entertainment. But beneath the spectacle, something deeper was occurring. Public acceptance. People were becoming familiar with flight. The impossible was becoming ordinary. The strange was becoming familiar. The future was becoming visible. Governments soon recognized aviation's strategic potential. Military leaders understood mobility, speed, observation, communication. For centuries, armies had depended upon what they could see from the ground. Airplanes offered an entirely new perspective. The view from above. The implications were enormous. Aircraft could observe enemy movements, map terrain, carry messages, extend awareness beyond traditional limits. The military significance of flight became increasingly clear. As tensions grew in Europe before the First World War, governments invested more heavily in aviation. Research expanded, production increased, aircraft became national priorities. The airplane was no longer merely a machine, it was becoming an instrument of power. Then came war. When the First World War erupted in 1914, aviation remained young. Pilots entered the conflict flying machines that often seemed primitive. Many aircraft carried little more than a pilot and an engine. Yet the war accelerated development at astonishing speed. Necessity drove innovation. Aircraft became faster, stronger, more capable. Military demands pushed engineers beyond previous limits. By the end of the conflict, aviation had changed dramatically. The airplane emerged from the war transformed. No longer an experiment, no longer a novelty, a proven technology. The war revealed both the promise and the danger of flight. Aircraft could connect, but they could also destroy. This dual nature would remain part of aviation's story forever. After the war, thousands of trained pilots returned home. So did thousands of aircraft. Aviation suddenly possessed talent, experience, machines, infrastructure, the ingredients for rapid expansion. Former military pilots searched for new opportunities. Many became barnstormers, traveling performers who brought aviation directly to the public. They flew from town to town, offering rides, performing stunts, demonstrating the possibilities of flight. For many Americans, a barnstormer provided their first close encounter with an airplane. The experience was unforgettable. The machine no longer seemed distant, it became real, personal, accessible. Aviation spread through imagination as much as technology. Children looked upward and dreamed. Inventors imagined possibilities. Entrepreneurs envisioned businesses. Governments envisioned networks. The airplane inspired ambition, and ambition fueled growth. New industries appeared. Aircraft manufacturing expanded. Training schools emerged. Airfields multiplied. What had once been a small community of experimenters became an ecosystem, an aviation economy, an aviation culture, an aviation future. The airplane was beginning to reshape society. Not yet through mass transportation, not yet through global travel. Those developments still lay ahead, but the foundations were being built. The skills, the technologies, the infrastructure, the public trust, all were growing together. Most people still traveled by train, still crossed oceans by ship, still experienced the world at traditional speeds, yet change was underway. A new form of movement had arrived, a form of movement unconstrained by roads, unconstrained by tracks, unconstrained by terrain. The airplane introduced a revolutionary idea: travel in a straight line, across rivers, across mountains, across deserts, across borders. The sky ignored obstacles that had shaped history for centuries, and that realization carried profound consequences. The airplane was no longer merely proving it could fly. It was beginning to prove why flight mattered. The world remained enormous, but for the first time, humanity possessed a tool capable of making it smaller. The first decades of aviation proved that airplanes could fly. The next challenge was proving they could matter. Flying for a few minutes was impressive. Flying for a purpose was revolutionary. The airplane needed a practical role, a reason to exist beyond experimentation and spectacle. That role arrived in an unexpected form. Mail for centuries, communication moved at the speed of transportation. Messages traveled by horse, by ship, by train. Even in the modern age, distance imposed delays. A letter crossing a continent could require days. A letter crossing an ocean could require weeks. Information moved faster than ever before. Yet it was still limited by the realities of geography. The airplane offered another possibility. For the first time, messages could rise above mountains, above rivers, above difficult terrain, following routes impossible for traditional transportation. Governments quickly recognized the opportunity. Airmail services emerged. At first, the work was difficult. Pilots navigated without modern instruments. Weather forecasts remained primitive. Airfields were sparse, accidents were common. Yet the service worked. Letters arrived faster. Businesses noticed. Citizens noticed. The value of aviation became increasingly apparent. Every successful delivery strengthened confidence. Every successful route expanded possibilities. The airplane was beginning to earn its place in daily life. Pilots flying airmail became some of the most skilled aviators in the world. They flew through storms, through darkness, through uncertainty. Each flight expanded operational knowledge. Each challenge produced lessons. The infrastructure of aviation grew stronger. Radio communication improved. Navigation systems improved. Weather forecasting improved. Airmail did more than deliver letters. It helped build the foundation of modern aviation. Meanwhile, public fascination with flight continued growing. People wanted heroes. Aviation provided them. Pilots became celebrities. Newspapers followed their achievements. Crowds gathered to celebrate their victories. No aviator captured public imagination more completely than Charles Lindbergh. In 1927, Lindbergh embarked on a journey many considered impossible, a non-stop flight across the Atlantic Ocean. Alone, the distance was immense. The risks were considerable. Mechanical failure, weather, navigation errors. Any could prove fatal. Yet Lindbergh succeeded. His aircraft, the Spirit of St. Louis, carried him from New York to Paris. The flight transformed him into an international sensation. But its importance extended far beyond one individual. Lindbergh demonstrated something profound. Long-distance air travel was possible. The oceans that had separated continents for centuries suddenly seemed smaller. The world felt different, more connected, more accessible, more reachable. The flight captured global attention because it symbolized a new era, an era in which geography would lose some of its power. The airplane was beginning to challenge distance itself. Businesses moved quickly. If aircraft could carry mail, perhaps they could carry passengers. If pilots could cross oceans, perhaps ordinary travelers could as well. The idea of commercial aviation gained momentum. Early airlines emerged. The experience was very different from modern air travel. Aircraft were smaller, slower, less comfortable. Routes were limited. Tickets were expensive. Passengers often viewed flying as an adventure rather than a routine activity. Yet demand existed. People valued speed. even when comfort remained imperfect. Time has always been valuable. The airplane offered something precious, the ability to save it. The airline industry expanded gradually. New routes connected cities. Regional networks developed. Operational experience increased. Each successful flight built public trust. Aviation was evolving from a pioneering endeavor into a transportation system. The transformation required enormous effort. Airports had to be constructed. Maintenance systems had to be established. Pilots had to be trained. Regulations had to be developed. The entire ecosystem of commercial flight had to be invented. Piece by piece, it emerged. The 1920s and 1930s became a period of extraordinary aviation progress. Aircraft designs improved rapidly. Cabins became more comfortable. Reliability improved. Range increased. Manufacturers competed to build better airplanes. Every innovation expanded the possibilities of flight. One aircraft symbolized this progress more than most. The Douglas DC-3. Introduced in the 1930s, it transformed commercial aviation. Reliable, efficient, profitable, comfortable by the standards of the time. The DC-3 helped prove that airlines could become sustainable businesses. Passengers embraced the experience. Air travel became increasingly practical. The airplane was no longer merely a machine for daring individuals. It was becoming a service, a system, an industry. The world responded accordingly. Business leaders began traveling farther. Governments communicated more efficiently. Communities became more connected. The pace of life accelerated. Distance still mattered, but less than before. The airplane had begun compressing geography. Cities once separated by days could now be separated by hours. The implications were enormous. Trade changed. Tourism changed. Diplomacy changed. Opportunity changed. The airplane was not simply transporting people. It was reshaping expectations. People began assuming they could travel farther, faster, more frequently. A new mindset emerged. The sky was no longer a barrier. It was a pathway, an invisible network stretching across nations and continents. By the late 1930s, aviation stood on the edge of another transformation. Airlines were growing. Aircraft were improving. Global connections were expanding. The future seemed bright. But another global conflict was approaching. A conflict that would once again accelerate aviation technology beyond anything previously imagined. The airplane had already changed the world. Soon, it would change even faster. By the late 1930s, the airplane had proven its value. It carried mail, it carried passengers, it connected cities, it inspired millions. Yet, aviation was still young. Its greatest transformation remained ahead. History would provide the catalyst: war. When the Second World War began in 1939, nations entered the conflict with aircraft already playing important roles. By the time the war ended 6 years later, aviation would stand at the center of military power. The airplane would become faster, stronger, more reliable, more capable. The pace of innovation would be extraordinary. Technologies that might have taken decades to develop emerged in only a few years. The demands of war accelerated everything. Aircraft became tools of reconnaissance. Fighters, bombers, cargo carriers, maritime patrol aircraft, training aircraft. Every mission required specialized designs. Every challenge demanded new solutions. Factories expanded at unprecedented speed. Entire industries reorganized around aircraft production. Workers who had never seen an airplane now helped build them. Assembly lines operated continuously. Engineers solved problems under intense pressure. The scale was immense. Millions of people became part of the aviation effort. The airplane was no longer a niche technology. It had become a strategic necessity. One of the most important developments involved speed. Military success often depended upon reaching objectives first. Aircraft designers pursued more powerful engines, more efficient aerodynamics, stronger materials. The result was dramatic. Each new generation of aircraft outperformed the last. Pilots flew higher, farther, faster. The sky became an arena of constant innovation. At the same time, aviation transformed military strategy. For centuries, geography shaped warfare. Mountains protected nations. Oceans provided security. Distance created obstacles. Aircraft challenged these assumptions. Bombers could cross borders. Reconnaissance aircraft could observe enemy movements. Cargo planes could transport supplies over difficult terrain. The airplane reduced the protective value of distance. The world became strategically smaller. Air power emerged as a defining element of modern warfare. The airplane could influence events far from traditional front lines. Entire campaigns depended upon control of the sky. Military leaders increasingly recognized a simple truth. The nation that mastered aviation gained significant advantages. This realization fueled enormous investment. Research laboratories expanded. Testing programs accelerated. Engineers explored new possibilities. Among the most significant innovations was radar. The ability to detect aircraft at a distance transformed defense. Nations could see threats approaching, prepare responses, coordinate actions. Radar and aviation became closely linked. Together, they changed how wars were fought. Meanwhile, transport aircraft demonstrated another critical capability, moving people and supplies rapidly across great distances. Armies depend upon logistics, food, fuel, equipment, medical supplies. The airplane offered unprecedented flexibility. Cargo could bypass damaged infrastructure, reach isolated regions, support operations that would otherwise be impossible. The logistical power of aviation became increasingly apparent. Aircraft were not merely weapons. They were connectors, movers, enablers. A role they would continue performing long after the war ended. One of the war's most remarkable achievements involved production itself. Factories built aircraft in astonishing numbers. The industrial effort revealed humanity's capacity for organization and manufacturing. Thousands of airplanes became tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. The scale would have seemed unimaginable only decades earlier. The airplane had become a mass-produced machine, a product of industrial civilization, a symbol of technological capability. Yet even as wartime production expanded, engineers looked toward the future. One innovation stood out: the jet engine. For decades, aircraft relied primarily on propellers. The technology worked, but limits existed. Engineers sought greater speed, greater efficiency, greater performance. Jet propulsion offered answers. Near the end of the war, the first operational jet aircraft appeared. They represented the future, a future arriving faster than expected. The jet age had begun. Although still in its infancy, the implications were clear. Aircraft would soon become dramatically faster. The world would become dramatically smaller. The airplane's impact would expand far beyond military applications. The foundations of modern air travel were being laid. As the war drew to a close, aviation stood transformed. The aircraft of 1945 differed enormously from those of 1939. The pace of change had been extraordinary. Engine technology, navigation, communications, production methods, materials. Every aspect of aviation had advanced. The conflict left behind a legacy of knowledge, a vast pool of trained pilots, experienced engineers, manufacturing expertise, infrastructure, airfields, technology. The ingredients for a post-war aviation revolution. And that revolution arrived quickly. When peace returned, many of the advances developed during wartime found new purposes. Aircraft once designed for military operations inspired commercial designs. Navigation systems improved civilian travel. Production techniques reduced costs. Air travel became more practical, more reliable, more accessible. The airplane was preparing for its next role, not as a weapon, not as an experiment, but as a global transportation network. The war had accelerated aviation beyond anything previous generations could have imagined. Now the world would discover what happened when those capabilities were redirected toward peace. The airplane had conquered the sky. Next, it would conquer distance itself. When the Second World War ended, the world faced a question. What would become of aviation? The answer arrived quickly. The technologies developed during the conflict did not disappear. They spread. They evolved. They entered civilian life. And they transformed transportation. For decades, long-distance travel had belonged primarily to ships and railroads. Crossing an ocean required patience. Crossing a continent required time. Distance still shaped decisions. Distance still imposed limits. The airplane was about to change that. The post-war years witnessed an explosion of commercial aviation. Airlines expanded routes. Governments invested in airports. Manufacturers developed new aircraft. Passengers became increasingly willing to fly. The industry entered a period of extraordinary growth. The airplane was no longer a novelty. It was becoming infrastructure, a permanent feature of modern life. At first, many commercial aircraft still resembled their wartime predecessors. Propeller-driven, reliable, capable. But another revolution was approaching: the jet engine. Jet propulsion offered something airlines desperately wanted: speed, the ability to transport passengers faster than ever before. The promise was transformative. Shorter journeys, greater efficiency, new possibilities. In the 1950s, the jet age arrived. Among the most influential aircraft was the Boeing 707. The airplane changed expectations. Passengers who once spent days traveling could now reach destinations in hours. The difference was profound. Not merely a matter of convenience, a matter of perception. The world suddenly felt smaller. Cities that once seemed distant became accessible. International travel became realistic for larger numbers of people. Business leaders embraced the change. Governments embraced the change. Travelers embraced the change. The jet age accelerated globalization before the word became common. Airports evolved alongside aircraft. What had once been simple airfields became complex transportation hubs. Runways lengthened, terminals expanded, control towers multiplied. Ground operations became increasingly sophisticated. Airports transformed into gateways connecting nations. Entire regions benefited from aviation infrastructure. Economic activity clustered around airports. Jobs emerged, industries expanded. The airplane was reshaping geography in new ways. Airlines built international networks. Routes connected continents. Passengers boarded aircraft in one hemisphere and arrived in another. The experience would have seemed extraordinary to earlier generations. For most of human history, oceans represented formidable barriers. Now they became corridors. The Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, all became easier to cross. The airplane achieved something remarkable. It diminished the importance of water as an obstacle. For centuries, maritime travel dominated long-distance transportation. Ships remained important, but aviation introduced competition unlike anything before. Speed became its advantage, an overwhelming advantage. Weeks became days, days became hours. Hours continued shrinking. The compression of time reshaped expectations. Businesses adjusted, governments adjusted, families adjusted, the world adjusted. International tourism expanded dramatically. Places once reserved for explorers and the wealthy became destinations for ordinary travelers. A person could live in one country and vacation in another. The concept would have seemed astonishing only a few generations earlier. Tourism became a global industry. Hotels expanded, resorts expanded, local economies benefited. Entire regions became connected to international visitors. The airplane was creating new relationships between places. Business travel underwent a similar transformation. Before aviation, international commerce often depended upon lengthy journeys. Meetings required substantial commitments of time. Distance limited interaction. Air travel changed the equation. Executives could visit overseas offices. Governments could conduct diplomacy more efficiently. Companies could coordinate operations across continents. The airplane accelerated decision-making, accelerated communication, accelerated economic integration. The pace of global business increased. So did the scale. The psychological impact was equally important. People began thinking differently about the world. Foreign countries felt closer. International opportunities felt more attainable. Geography retained significance, but less than before. The airplane altered mental maps as much as physical ones. It encouraged a global perspective, a recognition that distant places were not truly distant anymore. The world was becoming interconnected. The airplane served as one of the primary mechanisms of that transformation. Technology continued advancing. Aircraft became larger, more efficient, more comfortable. Pressurized cabins improved passenger experience. Navigation systems improved reliability. Safety standards improved confidence. Every improvement expanded aviation's reach. Every improvement attracted more passengers. commercial flight became increasingly routine, a remarkable achievement for a technology barely half a century old. Meanwhile, freight aviation emerged as another powerful force. Cargo aircraft transported valuable goods rapidly across long distances. Perishable products, critical components, urgent shipments. The airplane enabled supply chains that would previously have been impossible. Businesses increasingly depended upon speed. Aviation provided it. The movement of goods accelerated alongside the movement of people. The world economy became more tightly connected. As aviation expanded, it created new professions: pilots, flight attendants, air traffic controllers, aircraft mechanics, airport operators, logistics specialists. Millions of people became part of the aviation ecosystem. An industry once populated by a handful of pioneers had become a global workforce. The transformation was extraordinary. Yet, even as commercial aviation flourished, engineers continued imagining something larger. Aircraft carrying hundreds of passengers, routes spanning the globe, travel on a scale never before attempted. The jet age had begun shrinking the world. But the greatest expansion of air travel was still ahead. The airplane was preparing to become not merely a transportation option, but one of the defining systems of modern civilization. By the 1960s, aviation had already transformed the world. Jet aircraft crossed oceans. Airlines connected continents. International travel expanded rapidly. Yet flying remained beyond the reach of many people. Air travel was growing, but it had not yet become truly mass transportation. That would require another leap, another aircraft, another vision of what flight could become. The answer arrived in the form of a giant, the Boeing 747. When it first appeared at the end of the 1960s, it seemed almost impossible, larger than previous airliners, capable of carrying hundreds of passengers. A machine so enormous that many questioned whether airlines could fill it. But they underestimated something important: demand. Humanity wanted to travel, and the airplane was making that desire increasingly achievable. The 747 represented more than engineering. It represented scale, a new approach to transportation. Rather than carrying dozens of passengers, aircraft could carry hundreds. Rather than serving a limited market, airlines could serve millions. The economics changed. Costs could be spread across larger numbers of travelers. Airfares gradually became more accessible. Flying became less exclusive, more democratic, more widespread. The age of mass air travel had begun. The impact was immediate. Passenger numbers surged, airports expanded, new routes appeared, tourism exploded. People who might never have considered international travel suddenly found it within reach. Families crossed oceans. Students studied abroad. Tourists explored distant cultures. Business travelers connected global markets. The airplane was reshaping daily life on a scale previously unimaginable. The jumbo jet became a symbol of globalization. Its size reflected a larger truth. The world was becoming interconnected. Goods moved faster. Ideas moved faster. People moved faster. The airplane served as the infrastructure of that transformation. Invisible to some, obvious to others, but essential to all. As passenger numbers increased, another challenge emerged: managing the skies. Early aviation operated in a relatively empty environment. Pilots enjoyed vast amounts of space. Traffic remained limited. That reality was disappearing. Air traffic increased year after year. Thousands of flights became tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. The sky itself required organization. Air traffic control became one of the most important systems in modern transportation. Controllers coordinated movements, maintained separation, managed complexity. Every day they guided aircraft safely through crowded airspace. Most passengers rarely thought about this hidden network, yet it was essential. Without coordination, mass aviation could not function. The airplane depended not only upon aircraft but upon systems, procedures, infrastructure, people. The modern aviation ecosystem grew increasingly sophisticated. Radar expanded, communications improved, navigation technology advanced, computers assisted decision-making. The result was remarkable. Aircraft moved across continents with extraordinary precision. A passenger might board a flight in one country and land thousands of miles away within minutes of the scheduled time. Such reliability would have seemed miraculous to earlier generations. Tourism became one of aviation's most visible achievements. Entire regions transformed because of air travel. Island nations welcomed visitors from around the world. Historic cities attracted international tourists. Remote destinations became accessible. The economic effects were profound. Hotels expanded. Restaurants expanded. Local businesses flourished. Communities connected to global markets. The airplane became an engine of development, a bridge between cultures, a catalyst for opportunity. Cultural exchange accelerated as well. People encountered new languages, new traditions, new perspectives. Travel broadened horizons. The airplane made those experiences more common. A student from one continent could study on another. An artist could find inspiration abroad. A family could reunite despite living thousands of miles apart. The world remained diverse, but it became more connected. Business travel continued expanding. Global corporations emerged. Operations stretched across continents. Meetings occurred across time zones. Supply chains spanned oceans. The airplane made such complexity manageable. Executives could visit international offices. Engineers could inspect overseas facilities. Partnerships could be maintained through personal interaction. The airplane helped create the global economy, not alone, but as one of its most important enablers. Meanwhile, aircraft technology continued advancing. Engines became more efficient. Cabins became quieter. Safety improved. Range increased. Manufacturers competed intensely. Every innovation mattered because aviation had become a cornerstone of modern life. Reliability became especially important. Passengers expected schedules to be maintained. Businesses expected deliveries to arrive. Governments expected transportation networks to function. Aviation matured into a system people depended upon, not occasionally, continuously. The airplane became part of civilization's operating infrastructure, as significant in its own way as highways, railroads, power grids, and telecommunications. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this transformation was its speed. Only decades separated the Wright brothers' first flight from the era of jumbo jets. A journey from fragile wood and fabric machines to aircraft carrying hundreds of passengers across oceans. The pace of change was extraordinary. Few technologies in history evolved so quickly. Fewer still reshaped society so completely. Yet aviation's story was far from finished. The skies would become busier, the networks larger, the aircraft more capable, and the world more connected. The airplane had already shrunk the world. Soon, it would help create a truly global society. When most people think about aviation, they think about passengers, airports, vacations, business trips, family reunions, the visible side of flight. But another aviation revolution was unfolding at the same time. One that operated largely out of sight. One that would help reshape the global economy. Cargo, the movement of goods through the air. For centuries, commerce had depended upon speed limits imposed by geography. Products traveled by wagon, by ship, by train, by truck. Each method possessed strengths. Each required time. The airplane introduced a new possibility: urgency. A package could leave one city and arrive in another before the day ended. A shipment could cross an ocean overnight. The implications were profound. Time-sensitive goods gained a new transportation option, and businesses quickly recognized its value. In the early years of aviation, cargo often occupied whatever space remained after passengers boarded: mail, small packages, important documents. But as demand increased, dedicated cargo aircraft emerged. Entire fleets devoted to moving goods, not people. The airplane was becoming a commercial tool in a new way, an instrument of logistics, a machine for compressing time. One company in particular helped redefine what air cargo could achieve: Federal Express, later known simply as FedEx. Its vision seemed ambitious, perhaps even unrealistic: create a network capable of delivering packages overnight across vast distances. Not eventually, not within a week, the next day. To accomplish this goal required something unprecedented: a transportation system built around speed. Aircraft became the backbone. Packages converged on central hubs, were sorted rapidly, then redistributed across the network. The system functioned almost like a circulatory system. Goods flowing continuously through arteries of air. The concept worked. Customers embraced it. Businesses embraced it. The expectation of rapid delivery became part of modern life. The airplane had changed not only transportation, it had changed expectations. Waiting a week for an important package increasingly felt unnecessary. The sky had become a highway. Globalization accelerated these trends. Manufacturing expanded across borders. Supply chains stretched across continents. Companies sourced components from multiple countries. Products became international creations. A computer might be designed in one nation, manufactured in another, assembled in a third, sold in dozens more. Such complexity required transportation, reliable transportation, fast transportation. The airplane became one of the essential links holding the system together. Certain industries became especially dependent on air cargo: electronics, medical equipment, pharmaceuticals, high-value manufacturing, perishable products, time-sensitive goods. For these industries, speed often outweighed cost. The ability to move products quickly created competitive advantages. A delayed shipment could disrupt production. An expedited shipment could save millions. The airplane became a strategic asset, an invisible partner in countless business decisions. Air cargo also transformed healthcare. Medical supplies could reach remote regions faster. Critical medications could be transported rapidly. Organs for transplantation could travel extraordinary distances. Emergency responses became more effective. The airplane connected healthcare systems in ways previous generations could scarcely imagine. Lives were saved because geography became less restrictive. Distance still existed, but its power diminished. The same principle applied to disaster relief. When earthquakes struck, when hurricanes made landfall, when floods isolated communities. Aircraft often became among the first responders, delivering food, water, medicine, equipment, personnel. The ability to move resources quickly transformed humanitarian efforts. The airplane became more than a commercial tool. It became a lifeline, a mechanism for rapid response, a bridge between need and assistance. Meanwhile, international business continued evolving. Companies increasingly viewed the world as a connected marketplace. Executives traveled constantly. Investors crossed oceans. Partnerships formed across continents. The airplane enabled relationships that would previously have been impractical. Face-to-face meetings remained valuable. The airplane made them possible. A business leader could attend a meeting in another country and return home days later. The speed of commerce increased. So did its reach. Airports evolved into economic centers. Entire regions benefited from proximity to major aviation hubs. Warehouses clustered nearby. Logistics firms expanded operations. Hotels accommodated travelers. Restaurants served workers. Employment opportunities multiplied. The airport became more than transportation infrastructure. It became an economic ecosystem, a generator of activity, a catalyst for growth. The scale of global aviation became astonishing. Every day, thousands of aircraft crossed the skies. Passengers moved between nations. Cargo moved between markets. Information traveled through physical goods. Ideas traveled through people. The airplane facilitated connections at every level. Its influence extended into nearly every industry, nearly every community, nearly every aspect of modern life. And yet, much of this activity remained invisible. Consumers rarely considered how products arrived. Businesses rarely reflected on the complexity of logistics. Passengers often focused only on their own journeys. The vast system behind aviation operated quietly, efficiently, continuously. Like many essential technologies, it achieved success by becoming routine. But routine should not be confused with ordinary. The accomplishment remained extraordinary. A global network of machines moving through the sky. Connecting economies, connecting cultures, connecting people. The airplane had become one of civilization's great connectors, not merely shrinking the world, binding it together. Yet new challenges were approaching: growing demand, increasing congestion, rising environmental concerns, technological transformation. The next chapter of aviation would not focus solely on expansion. It would focus on adaptation. Because the world the airplane helped create was becoming more complex than ever before. For much of aviation history, Flying remained something special, important, prestigious, often expensive. Air travel connected the world, but access was still limited. Many people viewed flying as an occasional event, a rare opportunity, a luxury that would change. One of the most significant shifts occurred not in the design of aircraft, but in the economics of aviation. Governments around the world began reconsidering how airlines operated. Competition increased. Markets opened. New business models emerged. The result was profound. Air travel became accessible to far more people than ever before. In the United States, airline deregulation transformed the industry. Routes changed, pricing changed, competition intensified. Airlines gained greater flexibility. New carriers entered the market. Established companies adapted. The industry became more dynamic, more competitive, more responsive to consumer demand. The consequences reached far beyond aviation itself. Millions of people gained access to opportunities that had previously been difficult or unaffordable. The democratization of flight had begun. Low-cost airlines became one of the defining developments of the modern era. Their strategy was simple: reduce expenses, maximize efficiency, offer lower fares. The approach attracted enormous demand. Passengers who might once have traveled by car or train began flying instead. Others took trips they might never have considered. Entire categories of travel expanded. Weekend vacations, short business trips, family visits, educational opportunities. The airplane became increasingly integrated into everyday life. Distance continued losing its power. The impact could be seen in airports around the world. Passenger volumes surged. Terminals expanded. Runways multiplied. Infrastructure projects grew larger and more ambitious. Airports evolved into vast transportation complexes. Some became cities within cities, places where thousands worked, millions traveled, and global connections were constantly formed. The airport became one of the defining spaces of modern civilization, a crossroads of humanity. People from different nations, different languages, different cultures, passing through the same terminals, sharing the same skies. The rise of airport hubs transformed aviation further. Rather than connecting every city directly, airlines concentrated flights through major centers. Passengers transferred from one aircraft to another. Networks became more efficient. Routes became more extensive. A traveler could depart from a small city and reach nearly any destination on Earth. The system increased connectivity dramatically. The world became more accessible than ever before. The airplane was creating a global web of movement. Tourism expanded alongside these developments. Historic landmarks attracted international visitors. Remote islands welcomed travelers from distant continents. Cultural exchange accelerated. Local economies benefited. Entire industries grew around mobility. Hotels, restaurants, transportation providers, tour operators. The airplane supported them all. Travel became one of the world's largest industries, and aviation stood at its center. Education changed as well. Students crossed borders in growing numbers. Universities attracted international populations. Research collaboration expanded. Knowledge moved more freely. The airplane helped connect institutions separated by thousands of miles. Academic communities became global communities. Ideas traveled faster because people traveled faster. Families experienced the effects too. For most of history, migration often meant separation. Relatives who moved far away might rarely see one another again. The airplane changed that reality. Families spread across countries and continents could remain connected. Visits became practical. Relationships endured. Distance remained real, but it became less final. The airplane altered the emotional geography of human life. Business travel continued evolving. Global corporations operated across multiple continents. Employees crossed oceans regularly. Conferences attracted international participants. Investment flowed across borders. The airplane became an essential component of economic activity. The global economy increasingly relied upon physical mobility. People still needed to meet, to negotiate, to collaborate. The airplane enabled those interactions at unprecedented speed, at unprecedented scale. The numbers became astonishing. Millions of flights every year, billions of passengers, countless tons of cargo, an aviation network spanning the planet. The scale would have been unimaginable to the Wright brothers. Yet it emerged within little more than a century. A remarkable transformation, from fragile experimental machines to a global transportation system. As aviation expanded, it also became increasingly safe. Advances in engineering, training, navigation, maintenance, regulation, all contributed to improved reliability. Flying became one of the safest forms of transportation. This achievement further strengthened public confidence. Passengers boarded aircraft, expecting safe arrival. An expectation built upon decades of continuous improvement. Yet success brought new challenges. Busy airports experienced congestion. Crowded skies required sophisticated management. Environmental concerns gained attention. The very scale of aviation created questions about sustainability. How could the world continue enjoying the benefits of flight while addressing its costs? The answer would require innovation. Once again, aviation had always evolved through adaptation, and another era of adaptation was beginning. The airplane had become ordinary in one sense, a routine part of life for hundreds of millions. Yet in another sense, it remained extraordinary, a machine carrying humanity across vast distances at tremendous speed, a machine shrinking the world every single day. The journey was not over. The next chapter would explore what happens when a technology becomes so successful that civilization begins depending upon it completely. The success of aviation created an unusual challenge. The more people depended upon airplanes, the less room there was for failure. Aviation was no longer an experiment, no longer a luxury, no longer an emerging industry. It had become infrastructure, a critical system supporting commerce, tourism, communication, healthcare, government, family life, and global trade. When billions of people depend upon a technology, reliability becomes essential. Trust becomes essential. Safety becomes essential. The modern aviation system was built upon all three. Few passengers think about this when boarding an aircraft. They find their seats, store their bags, fasten their seat belts, and prepare for departure. The process feels routine. Yet behind that routine lies one of the most sophisticated systems ever created. Pilots, air traffic controllers, engineers, meteorologists, maintenance crews, airport personnel, manufacturers, regulators. Thousands of professionals contribute to every flight, each performing a specific role, each helping transform complexity into confidence. The airplane may appear simple from a passenger's perspective. The reality is far more intricate. Air traffic control became one of the most important components of this system. As aviation expanded, aircraft could no longer rely solely on visual separation. The skies became crowded, routes intersected, schedules intensified, coordination became critical. Controllers guided aircraft across continents, managed departures, managed arrivals, maintained safe distances, resolved conflicts. The process occurred continuously, day and night, across oceans, across deserts, across mountain ranges, across nations. The sky itself became organized, structured, managed, a vast invisible network supporting global movement. Navigation evolved dramatically as well. Early pilots often relied upon landmarks, rivers, roads, railway tracks. The method worked only under favorable conditions. Modern aviation demanded more. Radio navigation expanded possibilities. Then satellites transformed them. The global positioning system revolutionized movement. Aircraft could determine position with remarkable precision. Routes became more efficient. Operations became safer. The entire transportation network benefited. For most passengers, the technology remained invisible, but its influence was everywhere. Weather forecasting represented another crucial advancement. The atmosphere can be unpredictable. Storms, turbulence, wind, ice, visibility, each influences flight. Modern aviation depends upon extensive meteorological knowledge. Forecasting systems gather enormous amounts of data. Pilots receive detailed information. Airlines adjust plans accordingly. The ability to anticipate conditions enhances both safety and efficiency. Once again, science helps transform uncertainty into confidence. Safety itself became one of aviation's defining achievements. Every incident, every accident, every near miss generated lessons. Investigations identified causes. Engineers developed solutions. Procedures improved. Training evolved. The aviation industry embraced a culture of continuous learning. The objective was clear: reduce risk, improve reliability, protect lives. The results were extraordinary. Commercial aviation became one of the safest forms of transportation ever developed, an achievement earned through decades of effort. Globalization accelerated after the Cold War. Markets opened. Trade expanded. International cooperation increased. The airplane became one of the primary mechanisms supporting this transformation. Businesses reached new customers. Investors explored new opportunities. Workers pursued careers abroad. Students studied internationally. Families connected across continents. The airplane facilitated all of it. Physical distance continued losing influence. A company could operate globally. A university could attract students from around the world. An individual could maintain relationships across oceans. The airplane helped make such realities possible. The world economy became increasingly interconnected. Supply chains stretched across multiple continents. Products traveled enormous distances before reaching consumers. Air transportation played a vital role in maintaining these systems. Urgent shipments, critical components, perishable goods, high-value products, all benefited from speed. The airplane enabled a level of economic coordination previously unimaginable. The modern global marketplace depended upon mobility. Aviation provided it. Healthcare continued benefiting as well. Medical specialists traveled rapidly. Patients accessed treatment far from home. Emergency supplies reached crisis zones. Vaccines moved through international networks. The airplane became a healthcare asset on a global scale. Its influence extended beyond transportation. It supported human well-being, human resilience, human survival. The same principle applied during emergencies. Natural disasters often disrupt traditional infrastructure. Roads become impassable, ports become damaged, communities become isolated. Aircraft frequently provide essential connections during such moments, delivering aid, transporting personnel, restoring communication. The airplane becomes more than a vehicle. It becomes a lifeline. Modern civilization increasingly depended upon aviation in ways both visible and invisible. Tourists noticed it. Business travelers noticed it. But many other beneficiaries never saw the aircraft directly. Consumers purchasing products, patients receiving treatment, communities receiving aid. Their lives were influenced by aviation regardless. The airplane had become deeply embedded in daily life, so deeply embedded that many people rarely considered its significance. This invisibility reflected success. The best infrastructure often fades into the background: electricity, water systems, telecommunications, and aviation. People notice these systems most when they stop functioning. Their reliability creates normalcy. Their absence reveals importance. The airplane had reached that stage, a trusted component of modern civilization. Yet new challenges continued emerging. Environmental concerns intensified. Technology advanced. Passenger expectations evolved. The aviation industry once again faced questions about adaptation. How could flight continue expanding while addressing new realities? The answer would shape the next chapter of aviation's story. Because the airplane had already shrunk the world, now it faced the challenge of sustaining that achievement for future generations. For more than a century, aviation pursued a simple goal: fly farther, fly faster, carry more people, connect more places. The results transformed civilization, yet success created new questions. As air travel expanded, its scale became impossible to ignore. Millions of flights, billions of passengers, a global network operating every hour of every day. The airplane had shrunk the world, but maintaining that achievement required confronting new challenges. Among the most significant was efficiency. Every flight consumes energy. Every journey requires fuel. As passenger numbers increased, airlines sought ways to reduce costs. Engineers sought ways to improve performance. Governments sought ways to balance growth with environmental concerns. The challenge was complex. Modern civilization depended upon aviation, yet aviation itself had to evolve. This was not the first time the industry faced transformation. Throughout its history, adaptation had been a constant companion. The transition from wood to metal, from propellers to jets, from visual navigation to satellites. Each generation reimagined what flight could be. The 21st century demanded another reinvention. Aircraft manufacturers focused intensely on efficiency. Small improvements produced enormous benefits. A lighter aircraft consumed less fuel. A more aerodynamic wing reduced resistance. A more efficient engine extended range. Each gain appeared modest in isolation. Together, they transformed performance. Engineers refined designs that had evolved for decades. Computers became essential tools. Simulations allowed designers to test ideas long before construction began. The airplane itself became a product of digital engineering. The rivalry between Boeing and Airbus shaped much of this era. The two companies competed intensely. Each sought to build better aircraft, more efficient aircraft, more comfortable aircraft. Their competition accelerated innovation. New materials entered service. Advanced avionics improved operations. Fuel consumption decreased. Passenger experience improved. The benefits spread throughout the industry. Competition became a powerful engine of progress. One of the most important developments involved composite materials. For much of aviation history, metal dominated aircraft construction. Strong, reliable, proven. Yet newer materials offered advantages: reduced weight, improved durability, greater efficiency. Aircraft increasingly incorporated advanced composites into their structures. The result was lighter airplanes capable of traveling farther while consuming less fuel. Technology continued reshaping the cockpit as well. Early pilots relied heavily on physical skill and visual observation. Modern pilots operate within sophisticated digital environments. Computers assist navigation, monitor systems, manage performance, provide information. The pilot remains essential, but the tools have changed dramatically. Aviation entered the digital age. Airlines embraced data in new ways. Every flight generated information: fuel usage, weather conditions, maintenance performance, operational efficiency. Analysis helped identify opportunities for improvement. The industry became increasingly intelligent, increasingly connected, increasingly capable of learning from itself. Airports evolved alongside aircraft. Modern hubs became technological ecosystems. Automated systems assisted passengers. Digital displays coordinated movement. Security processes became more sophisticated. Operations became more efficient. The airport of the 21st century differed enormously from its predecessors. Yet its purpose remained familiar: connecting people, connecting places, connecting the world. Environmental concerns continued growing. Public attention focused increasingly on sustainability. Aviation faced difficult questions. How could billions continue benefiting from flight while reducing environmental impact? The answer would not come from a single breakthrough. It would require many. More efficient engines, smarter operations, alternative fuels, improved air traffic management, innovative aircraft designs. The search for solutions accelerated. Researchers explored sustainable aviation fuels, alternatives capable of reducing emissions while preserving the benefits of flight. Engineers investigated electric propulsion, hybrid systems, hydrogen technologies. Some concepts appeared promising. Others remained experimental. Yet the pattern was familiar. Throughout aviation history, today's experiment often becomes tomorrow's standard. The future remained open. Passengers themselves changed aviation. Expectations evolved. Travelers wanted greater comfort, greater reliability, greater connectivity. Airlines responded. Cabins improved. Entertainment systems expanded. Internet access arrived in the sky. Passengers could communicate while crossing oceans, work while traveling, remain connected to events unfolding thousands of miles away. The airplane became not only transportation, but a mobile extension of modern life. Global mobility continued expanding. Students studied abroad. Workers pursued international careers. Families maintained relationships across continents. Tourists explored distant cultures. The airplane supported all of it. Its role extended far beyond movement. It enabled opportunity, choice, connection. The world of the 21st century depended upon these capabilities. Yet, despite all the technology, all the sophistication, all the scale, the fundamental purpose of aviation remained unchanged. To overcome distance, that objective had guided the Wright brothers. It guided modern engineers. And it would guide future generations. Because distance still matters, the airplane simply changes what distance means. A journey once measured in weeks becomes a journey measured in hours. A destination once considered remote becomes accessible. An opportunity once beyond reach becomes attainable. The airplane continues reshaping geography, not by moving mountains, not by altering oceans, but by reducing their power over human lives. The future of aviation remains unwritten. New technologies will emerge. New aircraft will appear. New challenges will demand solutions. Yet one truth seems certain. Humanity will continue seeking connection. And as long as people seek connection, flight will remain part of the answer. The airplane has spent more than a century shrinking the world. Its next century may redefine it once again. The airplane changed transportation. That much is obvious. It moved people faster, moved goods faster, connected places more efficiently. But some of its most important effects cannot be measured in miles or hours. They can only be measured in human experience. Because the airplane did not merely change how people travel, it changed how people see the world. For most of history, a person's understanding of distant places was limited. Knowledge arrived through books, stories, maps, letters, news reports. A foreign country was often an abstraction, a place imagined rather than experienced. The airplane changed that relationship. Suddenly, distant places became reachable. Not someday, not after weeks of travel. Within hours, a student could visit another continent. A family could reunite across an ocean. A tourist could stand before landmarks once known only through photographs. The world became more tangible, more immediate, more personal. The airplane transformed geography into experience. Tourism became one of the most visible expressions of this transformation. Throughout history, travel had often been reserved for merchants, explorers, diplomats, the wealthy. Most people spent their lives relatively close to where they were born. The airplane expanded horizons. Millions gained opportunities to explore places their ancestors could scarcely imagine visiting. Ancient cities, remote islands, foreign cultures, natural wonders. The world became accessible on an unprecedented scale. Tourism grew into a global force, not merely an industry, a cultural exchange system. Every journey carried ideas alongside passengers. Languages, traditions, foods, customs, perspectives. The airplane accelerated these exchanges. Cultures remained distinct, yet they became increasingly connected. Migration changed as well. Human beings have always moved in search of opportunity, but aviation altered the nature of migration. Distance became less intimidating. A person could build a life far from home while remaining connected to family. Visits became practical. Relationships could continue despite geography. Entire communities developed across continents. The airplane allowed people to maintain multiple connections simultaneously, to belong in more than one place, to participate in a more interconnected world. Education benefited enormously. Universities attracted students from every corner of the globe. Researchers collaborated internationally. Knowledge moved more freely. Ideas spread more rapidly. Academic communities became increasingly global. The airplane helped create networks of learning that transcended borders. A scientific breakthrough in one nation could quickly influence researchers in another. Collaboration accelerated. Discovery accelerated. Progress accelerated. Business experienced a similar transformation. The airplane enabled the rise of multinational corporations. Companies could operate across continents. Executives could meet face-to-face despite enormous distances. Partnerships could be maintained through personal interaction. Trust often grows more easily when people meet. The airplane made such meetings practical. Global business became not only possible but routine. Economic integration deepened. The world economy became increasingly interconnected. Diplomacy changed too. Throughout history, international relations often unfolded slowly. Travel imposed delays. Communication imposed delays. The airplane reduced those barriers. Leaders could meet quickly during crises. Negotiators could travel rapidly between capitals. International cooperation became easier to organize. The airplane did not eliminate conflict, but it improved humanity's ability to communicate across borders. And communication remains one of civilization's most powerful tools. Humanitarian efforts benefited as well. Medical teams reached disaster zones more rapidly. Aid organizations operated on a global scale. Emergency resources crossed continents in hours. The airplane expanded humanity's capacity to respond to suffering, to provide assistance, to share resources, to support communities in need. The same machine that carried tourists and business travelers also carried hope, relief, and rescue. The airplane influenced culture in subtler ways too. Music spread internationally. Films reached global audiences. Fashion trends crossed oceans. Sports became worldwide phenomena. Artists traveled. Performers toured. Audiences expanded. The airplane accelerated cultural exchange. The world became more connected, not only economically, but creatively. Ideas traveled with unprecedented speed. Entire generations grew up with a more global perspective. The concept of foreign began changing, not disappearing, but evolving. Places once considered distant became familiar through travel. People became more aware of lives beyond their own communities. The airplane encouraged curiosity, exploration, engagement. It invited humanity to think beyond local horizons. Even family relationships changed. For most of history, migration often meant separation. Permanent separation, parents and children, siblings, friends, communities. Distance could become a lifelong barrier. The airplane weakened that barrier. A family spread across countries could remain connected. Visits became achievable. Celebrations could be shared. Milestones could be witnessed. The emotional geography of human life changed. The airplane helped keep people together despite physical distance. Yet the airplane's influence was not entirely positive. Greater mobility also accelerated the spread of disease, expanded environmental challenges, created new forms of vulnerability. Every transformative technology carries consequences. The airplane was no exception. Its story includes benefits and trade-offs, opportunities and responsibilities. The challenge has always been balancing them wisely. Still, when viewed across the span of history, the scale of transformation remains extraordinary. In little more than a century, humanity progressed from fragile flights, lasting seconds, to a world in which billions travel through the sky. The airplane altered commerce, politics, culture, education, migration, family life, tourism, and countless other aspects of civilization. Few inventions have touched so many dimensions of human experience. Perhaps its greatest achievement is not speed, not technology, not engineering. Perhaps its greatest achievement is connection, the ability to bring people together despite the vast size of the planet they inhabit. Because distance has always shaped human history, and the airplane has spent more than a century reducing its power. The world remains enormous, yet it feels smaller, more accessible, more interconnected, and much of that transformation occurred above the clouds. For thousands of years, humanity looked upward, toward birds, toward clouds, toward the open sky. The desire to fly appeared in myths, legends, dreams, stories told around fires and passed between generations. Flight represented something larger than transportation. It represented freedom, possibility, the overcoming of limits. For most of history, however, the sky remained beyond reach. Human beings could imagine flight, but they could not achieve it. The distance between dream and reality seemed immense. Then, in a matter of little more than a century, everything changed. The transformation began modestly, a small machine, a sandy stretch of coastline, a flight lasting only seconds. No one present could fully understand what would follow. No one could foresee the billions of journeys that lay ahead. Yet history often works that way. The most important revolutions rarely announce themselves. They begin quietly, then reshape the world. The airplane was one of those revolutions. At first, it was a curiosity, an experiment, a fragile machine tested by daring individuals. Its capabilities were limited, its future uncertain, but every year brought improvements. Every challenge produced new knowledge. Every flight expanded understanding. The airplane evolved rapidly, from gliders to powered flight, from propellers to jets, from open cockpits to sophisticated airliners, from local demonstrations to global networks. The pace of progress was extraordinary. Few technologies in history have advanced so dramatically in such a short period of time. The airplane transformed transportation. That alone would secure its place in history. Before flight, distance imposed powerful constraints. Travel required patience. Movement required time. Geography shaped opportunity. The airplane altered that equation. Mountains became easier to cross. Oceans became easier to cross. Continents became easier to cross. Distance did not disappear, but its influence diminished. The world became more accessible, more connected, more reachable. Commerce changed as a result. Businesses expanded beyond traditional boundaries. Markets grew. Supply chains stretched across continents. Goods moved rapidly through international networks. The airplane accelerated globalization, not by itself, but as one of its essential foundations. Modern economic integration depends upon mobility, and mobility depends upon transportation. The airplane provided it on a scale previous generations could scarcely imagine. Culture changed too. Ideas moved more freely. Artists traveled. Students studied abroad. Tourists explored distant societies. Languages mixed. Traditions interacted. The airplane encouraged exchange, not uniformity, not sameness, but connection. The sharing of experiences across borders. The development of a more interconnected human community. Politics and diplomacy evolved alongside these changes. Leaders could meet more easily. Nations could communicate more rapidly. International organizations could operate more effectively. The airplane made cooperation easier, even when agreement remained difficult. The ability to gather quickly during moments of crisis became one of the defining features of the modern world. Aviation helped make that possible. Families experienced the transformation in deeply personal ways. Parents visited children living abroad. Grandparents met grandchildren across oceans. Friends maintained relationships despite continents between them. Migration no longer required permanent separation. The airplane weakened one of history's oldest barriers: distance between loved ones. Its influence extended into science, medicine, education, humanitarian aid, disaster response, research collaboration. Countless endeavors benefited from faster movement. The airplane expanded humanity's ability to share knowledge, share resources, share expertise. Its impact reached far beyond airports and runways. It became woven into the fabric of civilization itself. Yet perhaps the airplane's greatest achievement was psychological. It changed how people thought about the world. For most of history, distant places felt truly distant. Foreign lands existed largely in imagination. The airplane transformed that perception. The world became navigable, a place that could be explored, experienced, understood. People began viewing the planet differently, not as isolated regions separated by insurmountable obstacles, but as connected parts of a larger whole. The airplane encouraged a global perspective, a recognition that humanity shares a common world. Of course, aviation's story is not without complexity. The airplane brought challenges alongside benefits, environmental concerns, new forms of risk, new responsibilities. Every transformative technology creates consequences. The airplane is no exception. Its future will depend upon innovation, adaptation, stewardship, The next century of aviation may look very different from the last. New fuels may emerge. New aircraft may appear. New technologies may redefine flight once again. But the underlying mission remains unchanged. Connection. The airplane exists because people seek connection. Connection to opportunities, to ideas, to markets, to cultures, to one another. That mission has guided aviation from the beginning, and it will continue guiding its future. When the Wright brothers left the ground in 1903, they did more than achieve powered flight. They opened a new chapter in human history, a chapter defined by mobility, by possibility, by the shrinking of distance. The airplane did not merely transport humanity. It transformed humanity's relationship with space itself. It changed where people could go, how quickly they could get there, and what became possible once they arrived. Few inventions can claim such influence. Fewer still can claim it on a global scale. The airplane can. Today, thousands of aircraft cross the sky at any given moment, carrying passengers, carrying cargo, carrying ideas, carrying hopes. Each flight is part of a story more than a century in the making. A story of innovation, determination, curiosity, and connection. The story of humanity's decision to leave the ground and never look back. The airplane did more than give humanity wings. It gave humanity a smaller world.